大家好，我是 Olive Branch Dial. So, you might have heard of the Mediterranean diet, and you're probably wondering whether it's healthy or not. Does it have any evidence to support the health claims that you might be hearing around? In this video, we're going to talk about what exactly is the Mediterranean diet and some of the studies that have been conducted on it to see if there really is any difference to any of the biomarkers to determine risk of disease like cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So what exactly is a Mediterranean diet? Well, in a nutshell, it's basically a lot of the countries that reside around the Mediterranean Sea, like Spain, Italy, Turkey, Greece. These countries, they have a very similar diet because of the agriculture in the region, and it usually has a very large base of vegetables, fresh vegetables and fruit as their main base, and lots of nuts and seeds, herbs like also onions and garlic, and lots of olive oil and olives. And then they have some dairy, cheese. They do also have some white meats, some chicken, lots of seafood as well. And the seafood usually is in the smaller types of fish like sardines and anchovies, which are really high in omega-3s. And then as you get less and less per week, they do still have red meat, maybe about 2 servings a week. And then lastly, they have some sweets as well, but that's actually very little. And so they do have wine in moderation, but overall they drink a lot of tea. And that's basically what comprises of a Mediterranean diet. So they did compare in a study the Mediterranean diet with a standard American diet. And that's not really good because it usually includes a lot of processed foods, processed meats, as well as a lot of refined carbohydrates, and usually in a lot of bad oil. And so when they compared these two diets, they looked for specific biomarkers, the blood lipid, which is your cholesterol level, as well as your gut health. And so when they compared them, they actually showed a very statistically significant difference on the health markers of a Mediterranean diet compared to a standard American diet for obese people. So the people who are obese who were studied, they showed clearly big improvement. In another study, which is a meta-analysis, basically a group of experiments that they looked through all of them and they picked out the common threads in them of clinical trials, so they're very well studied with intention on the effects of a Mediterranean diet on type 2 diabetic people. And they were looking for biomarkers again, such as your cholesterol levels. And what they found was they compared 8 different diets and then they ranked the top 3 as how it helped these people with diabetes. And the ranking was such that the first place is the Mediterranean diet. Second place was the paleo diet or the Paleolithic diet, which basically means a lot of vegetables and a lot of meat. And then the third place went to a low carb diet. And so this was a meta-analysis, so it was actually many studies that they combed through together to come up with a conclusion. Another study they did was particularly focusing on type 2 diabetes. So patients that had diabetes, they did have these 2 molecules that they were looking at specifically for diabetes, and that is CPR and adiponectin. And when CPR goes down and adiponectin goes up, then you can actually see that it's actually helping to prevent diabetes. And that's exactly what they did when they had them on the Mediterranean diet. These 2 molecules have shown a statistically significant difference and improved these biomarkers. And further, showing that the emphasis is on the Mediterranean diet does help people trying to prevent diabetes or trying to slow down the effects of it. In another study that they did, they wanted to see what are the effects of the Mediterranean diet by controlling for the lean red meat introduction. So they had many levels of how much lean red meat they had in the Mediterranean diet and to see what the biomarkers were. Again, blood lipid levels. And what they found was that it actually was, and this is compared to the standard American diet once again. And so again, the Mediterranean diet showed to be superior with all 3 levels of lean red meat improved people's biomarkers compared to the default diet. And so the conclusion was that lean red meat has its place in the Mediterranean diet for the same health benefits. And so taking it out may not necessarily be any better or worse. And then finally, there's a bunch of studies that they also looked into how the Mediterranean diet affects depression, clinical depression, and how it's related to cardiovascular disease. And they actually saw that there was an overlap with depression and cardiovascular disease, and usually it's in the form of inflammation, specifically in a decreased amounts of omega-3, which is a polyunsaturated fat that we eat, again, in small fish, salmon. And so they found that the Mediterranean diet, because it is rich in omega-3s, helps to lower the risk of depression and cardiovascular disease. However, you can actually supplement the omega-3s. So if you don't have the fish available, you can still take fish oil supplements, for example, to get that up, and it can still have an impact in reducing clinical depression. So in summary, guys, I do believe that there is an abundance of evidence to support the health claims that a Mediterranean diet is good for you. So I do recommend that you give it a shot if you want to try it. However, I do also believe that because the Mediterranean diet is successful is due to the fact that it is really low in sugar, bad fat, and processed foods. So any diet that's really targeting these three or in reducing these three will be successful, such as the vegetarian diet or even a vegan diet, as long as, again, you make sure you get your other nutrients, then it can be successful because these three are really what's going to be most damaging for your health. So that's it, guys. I hope you found that useful. As always, please leave any questions or comments below, and I'll see you next time.